Welcome to Millennial Pagan Podcast, the podcast that's bringing a voice to the growing number of millennial pagans in our brand of witchcraft, magic, and worship. We're your hosts, Autumn Wolf
and Jera Stone, and actually in studio we have Xerxes joining us.
Hello.
Hello.
So I know we are back from a bit of a December break.
Yeah.
Kind of a Yule break.
All we did was one mini-sode and a Christmas present for our Patreon supporters.
Yeah, which is still up there if you guys want to listen to it and just help out the show a little bit by donating to Patreon.
Yes, please do. So, Happy New Year, everybody.
Yes, Happy New Year 2019. I've already been accidentally writing 2018, scribbling it out and putting the 9 instead of the 8.
I haven't done that yet. I'm so proud of myself.
Well, I've been signing a lot of paperwork because I'm moving at the end of the month.
I know, you are.
Yeah.
We're going to have a whole new studio.
Yep, it's going to be awesome.
I know. So, Xerxes, how was your New Year?
It was pretty good. I spent it with some family. At the last minute, they let me know that they were flying in from Chicago, which is where I'm from. And, I just met up with them and had quite a bit of a good time, actually.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Unexpected, but it's awesome.
Yay, that's exciting.
Nice. Yeah.
So we asked Xerxes to come in with us and talk a little bit about Satanism and the different branches of what can go under the umbrella of Satanism. And I want to preface this for our listeners. The reason why we've asked him to talk about this subject specifically is because I personally think it's very important that the pagan community knows our allies. And if you've been listening to us talk about the Baphomet issue with the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, you've heard us specifically say that different branches of Satanism focuses specifically on religious freedoms and dealing with that in government and in the court systems. And because of that, that benefits us pagans, anybody who is a pagan, and anybody of any religion. Anytime we're working with having more freedom, it benefits everybody. And it's very important that we understand and we start making those bridges with our allies so that when they need help, we're there. Yeah. And when we need help, they're there. So let's get a little bit more understanding. Let's try and break down some of the fears people have with that word, Satan or Satanism or any of these words that we're going to be bringing up. If you have any questions at the end of this, after listening to this, listeners, please feel free to send us emails. If you hate me, if you want to totally get rid of this whole entire thing with Millennial Pagan, they've gone totally rogue and crazy. Sorry.
I mean, I think, and personally, I think it's a great idea because it's been in the spotlight a lot recently, and there's a lot of, and I somewhat hate to use this term, but also it kind of fits.
Right.
Fake news about what Satanism actually is, because there's no, there's no rational thought in the media anymore.
Right. And after saying all of that, we're first going to learn a little bit about Xerxes and his, I guess, not really, but totally coming of witch story.
Yes. Well, I guess everybody has a different way of coming of witch story, how they became a Satanist in this case. My story probably goes back since I was 7 years old. My family's religious. They're Catholic. They did the whole Sunday morning church and all that. And right around between 5 and 7, I remember when I was baptized even, I hated it. I cried. I didn't want to be a part of that. I can't give you specifics as to what was going through my mind. I just know that I didn't really appreciate that kind of thing. I was scared. I just walking into church has always seemed so mystifying in itself. It's daunting as a little kid.
Oh, yeah.
And even though my family went to church once in a while, not every Sunday, but once in a while they did. And, my mother was very religious and I respect her for it. I think that's where she got her strength from. Like a lot of people, even in Satanism or whatever religion you might have, you find certain strengths from it that you draw from. This is what keeps us going and it develops our mindset for everyday living. So in my case, I just knew that this kind of thing just wasn't for me at an early age. But I wouldn't say I was a Satanist then. I just wasn't. I knew that I didn't like going. And since I was baptized, I think I had a late baptism. I think I was 5 when it happened. Most people get it when they're like a year old or 6 months old or something.
I got my baptism when I was 7.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, mine was pretty old too because we had to wait until my mother had already passed. Not because it was against my mother's religion, but just because dealing with cancer wasn't fun.
Oh, wow.
But
Interesting. Yeah. Oh, well, I thought it was late because I know that a lot of people get it done.
Oh yeah,
when
very
they're
early.
infants.
What
Yeah.
I'm used to in Catholicism.
Yeah, and then at that, even though I was young, I felt like I wanted to have that choice to not get baptized. I just didn't want to do it. And by the time I was 7 years old, I just did not want to even go to church anymore. I was punished for it. They said, you're not going anywhere, to play with your friends or whatever. I'd rather be punished than to even go to church. That's how much I despised going. And it wasn't against anything that I was taught. I wasn't so accepting of it. I didn't feel like it was something I needed to do. There's a lot of this going to hell if you're a bad person stuff going on in that. And I just thought, I'm 7 years old. I'm like, I know I'm not a criminal or anything. I don't think I need to be here for this. So I just didn't like it. And it wasn't until, I think I was probably 8 or 9 after that I met an actual Satanist. I was at a local arcade video store, one of those places. They don't have them anymore like they used to. Usually mom and pop candy stores with arcade machines everywhere. You go there, play, and then you go home. And, there was older crowds, older teenagers or maybe early 20s. And there was this one guy having this like loud conversation with some other guy about Satanism. And he had the leather jacket with the D rings all over it. And you could tell he was into the metal at the time, metal scene, AC/DC, that kind of thing. And I think I remember asking him, like, wow, I overheard the conversation and I asked him, hey, he was a complete stranger to me. I said, do you believe in the devil or something? And he said, yeah, man. He just looked straight in my eyes and I believe in Satan. And it kind of scared me at the time. I was like, whoa, that's crazy. So that kind of thing always stayed with me, the whole religion conversation that I overheard and everything. So fast forward many years later, at this point I'm in the military and, I'm seeing things in the military that makes me question everything I ever believed in. And I still wasn't really a churchgoer even then. I was more of an atheist at that point, but I couldn't even call myself that. I didn't have a name for what I felt I was.
Yeah, there was something there that you could feel, but you weren't sure how to describe it.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So, not to try to get too emotional here, but my mother passed away in 1997. So it was pretty dramatic when I got the news. I was in the military when it happened. I was stationed in Hawaii. And all I got was my superiors just knocking on my door and telling me that I had to go home because something happened. She had passed away. So I didn't get a chance to say goodbye or anything. Right. So at that point, I just, everything went through my head. Like, what's going to happen now? What am I going to do? I'm over here doing this. The military is not going to cut me loose. I got my only, I don't have any brothers or sisters. So, she was everything for me. So, in my mind at the time, my whole world was just collapsing. I was depending on family to take care of things since I hadn't been there yet. And nothing was going according to what I was hoping for, to work out in my way. But they were doing things. I went to Chicago for what I thought would be the funeral. It turns out, because my family's originally from Mexico. I was born and raised in Chicago. So they shipped her to Mexico to have another funeral there and to bury her there. When I got to Chicago from Hawaii, and it was bad enough that I couldn't even get a flight out early enough and fast enough that I had to wait a whole weekend to get the next flight out of the island.
Oh, jeez.
Man, I get there and, I'm not going to go into details of what happened, but basically they shipped her to Mexico before I even got there. And I'm like, great. Now I got to wait like another few more days to get out of, Chicago. And then I got to go to Mexico. And then I got to get this approval from the military. And all these things are just conflicting in my head. Like, why is this happening? Is this some kind of a test to, At that point, I started having a lot of hatred towards my family and other people. You go through all these emotions, the grieving process, and anger is one of them. But the anger I also had built up inside was the fact that she was very religious and she had gone through a lot of ailments that probably led to an early, death. And I felt angry. So I started taking this out on what I thought was her religion. Right. And I was angry with God and all this other stuff. And then one day when I was fast forward, I'm back in base in the military in Hawaii, and some guy had the Satanic Bible. He had it on the desk. He was just on duty, desk duty, whatever. And he had that book he was reading, and I thought, man, I haven't seen that since that time when I was like 7, when that dude was arguing with some guy in the arcade store. So
Right.
I said, hey, man, I never, I've only heard of this book, but I never actually picked it up and read it. Do you mind if I borrow it? I was like, sure, man, go ahead. Dude, I picked up the book, man. I couldn't put it down after that. I think I went through that whole thing in one day, one sitting. I read the entire thing. It just really soaked you in. And then it opened me up to a lot of things. So all this anger that I had and everything just, all the pressure I was feeling just kind of was lifted. A lot of answers that I had, or questions that were answered at that moment. So, and that's when I realized, this is who I really am. And I've been this way. I just didn't know it. So, I just transformed all my anger into something more positive for me. Right. To make my life turn around. Instead of being depressed and sad over everything, I had to just have a better understanding of, this is life, this happens, and it's time to move on now. I'm on my own. I can't depend on anybody. And it really strengthens you as an individual. I've seen other people pick up the book and read it and say, man, my life has changed since I read this book. So it's not just so much because of the philosophy, but it's what you get out of it as an individual. It strengthens you. You find something out. You get something out of it that's valuable, unlike anything. I mean, it's like therapy and beyond. It really is.
I like that because it's for a lot of people, a religion is sitting in a chair, sitting somewhere, getting told what to believe.
Yeah,
and honestly, it's about doing the research. Actually picking up the book, reading it, getting into it.
Yeah.
And I mean that I just had that type of conversation with somebody from my past not too long ago.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
Yeah, it's reading it really. It's almost like therapeutic. I don't want to relate to it too much as that because it's a philosophy as well. It's you read it and you have to learn to change your mind to think in a certain way, and maybe you have to go back and reread it a couple of times over the course of your life.
Yeah.
Just to get versed, on that book and the content. But yeah, it does. It's a mindset. The philosophy. It's almost like a religion in the aspects of when they do rituals and what you expect to get out of it. It's kind of like religion in that regard. But it's about the individual. Everybody is a different person, a different mindset. And it's really, Satanism is an individualistic religion. Right. It's not about groups getting together, worshiping something or doing something. And it's not like that, which is something I'm also going to be talking about later.
Right.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Right, of course. You said it answered some questions. What question do you think really helped settle it in your mind, or what answer did you get in that time, like the first time reading it?
First time reading it was just understanding what Satan represents.
Okay.
That's one of the things that Anton LaVey wrote about in the book, in the Satanic Bible. It gives you like 11 statements of what Satan represents. This Satan represents, and there's these are statements that they're probably on the Church of Satan website as well. This is another thing I want to mention. A lot of people just go there and read the some of the content, the highlights of the book, but I strongly believe you have to go and actually read the book to understand what those statements are really about, the meaning behind how Anton LaVey came to write that. What the message was that he's trying to get across on those statements. So reading the statements, and I think they're called the 11 Satanic Statements of what Satan represents. It speaks to you as an individual. Instead of he uses the word Satan, but it's more like generalized because Satan represents the person. It represents you. So when you read it as Satan represents this and that and the other, it's really saying that this is who you really are. And when you come to terms to that and you feel like you can agree to that, you're like, yes, this is it. This is me. I am Satan. I am a Satanist. And that's how it happened in 97 for me. In July of 1997, I officially declared myself a Satanist.
Okay. So, what has your practice or your belief system changed since then, since 97? Like, what kind of developments?
As far as like, can you give me an example? Like, what
So, 97, you read the Satanic Bible, declared yourself a Satanist. It's been a couple of years.
Yes.
How have you evolved? What have you developed for yourself?
Well, just like everybody that ever picked up the book for the first time, when they start reading it, the first thing you get out of it is the excitement of this newfound love that you have for Satanism. And I think there's a lot of that going on right now. Mm-hmm. And certain organizations really are hyping it up, you know. And again, it's just because there's these highlights that you can just read on. People agree to it, so they suddenly think they're Satanists. But then when they do research, because after the excitement, you want more. You want to find others like you, and you know, you want to interact with people that way. You know, and they start searching for other Satanists, but you don't want to say that you're Satanist because there's still this. You know, back in 97.
Oh, of course.
You know, even before that, I mean, Satanists were very underground. You know, they don't like to tell people that they're satanic. And it was like that in 97. I couldn't just tell everybody I'm a Satanist. You know, I would have to stick with I'm just an atheist and that's it.
There's a big stigma around it.
Yes, it still is in some parts. Some people are more open about it now that there's a lot of it out there in the public, but. You know, the first part is, you know, when people discover the book and they read it, they start reading more. They're hungry for more knowledge because knowledge is a big deal. And, you know, it's everything in Satanism. Knowledge is important. So that's the first thing they want to do. They want to keep reading more. Then they want to interact with others like them, you know. And a lot of the stuff that's out there now are just highlights. They don't even pick up the actual book anymore. They just go to the website and read what's there. But the book is not on the website itself. You're not going to read the whole entire book on a few pages of, you know, web pages. You got to actually go buy the book and read it. And I'll say this now. There's no true Satanist has ever become a Satanist without reading the Satanic Bible by Anton LaVey.
So it doesn't matter what branch of Satanism, you have to read that book first.
You have to read the book. You have to have read the book to really declare yourself a Satanist, because you really have to understand it. And sadly, I think that a lot of people are not doing that anymore because it's so hyped up with, you know, I'm going to have to say it, the Satanic Temple.
Okay.
There's this ongoing belief, and it's almost obvious if you're a Satanist that a lot of its membership or people that are very supportive of the organization probably never read the book. Okay. They read whatever they shared on their website, and maybe they read stuff that was on the Church of Satan website before that. But they need to pick up the book and read it and really live it and develop the mindset with time, because you're not going to, you know, you can only observe so much, but you have to live like that as well. And you'll start to see the changes in your life around you by the way you live, by the standards you hold yourself to, with the new mindset and the new worldview you have as a result. But a lot of people, you know, we're living in the age of the millennials. Or, you know, I know you kind of hate that part. But everything is A to Z. They don't want to go through A, B, C. They want A to Z now. You know, they don't want to go through A, B, C until you get to Z. You know what I mean? It's just instant gratification is what they're going for. And it's really not like that. You just develop into it, you know? And I'm sure the pagans are the same way. You got to develop your magic and all that. You just don't.
Well, we have a stereotype or a joke that we say, if you've read one book and then you declare yourself the priest of yada yada, you're a fluffy bunny because you don't have enough behind you to get rid of the fluff.
Yes. We have. I think there's a little bit of that going on with Satanism as well. They say everybody wants to do, everybody wants to be a Satanist until it's time to do satanic shit. You know,
yes.
And everybody backs out. I don't want to do that. I want to be a Satanist, but I don't want to do this, or you know.
Right.
Hey.
No, same thing. Very much so. We agree that. At least with paganism, we're the religion of many books, and you have to keep reading to learn. And I think you're very much on the same mindset. You got to at least read this book here before you can start anything.
That would probably be step number one. The Satanic Bible is just a given. It has to be. After that, you could read what you want, but let me also I want to also tap into this this idea that people have about there's people that they follow the Satanic Temple, which is fine. I mean, if they want, it sounds like I'm against them, but I'm not totally against them. It's just, there's some things that they're doing. I think they're uncalled for. They're not really necessary, and I think it's I kind of know where I'm going with this now. Satanism isn't for everybody,
right?
And what they're doing is they're trying to really exploit Satanism. And it's getting out of control, or in spaces where it doesn't need to be going there. It's obvious little things that they do. Like I think we mentioned when we had talked on before today about the Twitter event. I'm not really a fan of that lawsuit with the Twitter thing, because the way I understood it was that Lucien Greaves was banned from Twitter for whatever reason. He was reported, or they took him down. But then he filed a complaint. He said, "Hey, I think this is wrong. I think you guys misunderstand what I'm doing here and all that." Whatever happened there, he got reinstated. So in my view, it was resolved. But he decided to sue them after the fact that it was resolved. So they settled on an agreement where he got reinstated, and he's decided to sue him anyway.
And this is the head of the TST?
Yes.
Okay. And just for some of our listeners, the TST stands for...
The Satanic Temple.
Okay. Just getting the basics. Yeah. So I guess coming back to kind of the first part of coming of which story type things. Can you give a basic, what is the simplest single paragraph you can to describe what is Satanism?
Wow.
I know, it's a difficult question.
For that, I would have to probably go to the 11 satanic statements to kind of give you maybe a few of those.
And then we'll give that basic, and then we'll go and take a break. So once we get the basic understanding, I think our listeners will know what we're going to talk about for the remaining of the episode.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, I think it's 9 satanic statements. Okay, it's actually 9, not 11. Anton LaVey wrote the 9 satanic statements, and I mean I can kind of read through them if you like.
Of course, or the basics, or however you want to do it.
Okay, so I mean you can make out what it is. Since you're not a Satanist, you can kind of make it out for what it is now. And if you ever really want to read into it, what it really means to understand these phrases, I recommend the book. But basically, number 1, Satan represents indulgence instead of abstinence. I mean, that's pretty basic, pretty basic understanding of that. Number 2, Satan represents a vital existence instead of spiritual pipe dreams. Again, for what it is, it's pretty, anyone can understand that, what that would mean. And again, the book will go into depth into each one of these. Number 3, Satan represents undefiled wisdom instead of hypocritical self-deceit. Number 4, Satan represents kindness to those who deserve it instead of love wasted on ingrates. And that's a strong one.
Right. I really like that one.
Yeah. That's huge. That's common practice with Satanists everywhere. And again, going back to the TST thing about Satan accepts everybody. No, it doesn't. Satanism is not for everybody. And and again, this is just me speaking. I don't speak for everybody.
Of course.
But I think a lot of people will relate to what I say when it comes to that, because the fourth one here is that's where I differ from the Satanic Temple on this, because they're all about this. In my view, it seems like they want to just take everybody in and say it's okay, you're a Satanist if you call yourself one, but you're not, in my view, because it's a philosophy, it's a way of looking at the world differently. It's practice also, and this statement says you can't, Satanism isn't for everybody. If there's certain things that you disagree on with the way Anton LaVey wrote the Satanic Bible, then you can't declare yourself a Satanist. There's no changing of the wording. I mean, that's how other religions were formed. One church didn't like the way this church did things, so they decided to create their own. And that's what's happening in Satanism. That's why you're starting to see a bunch of groups. Even Anton LaVey, just just understand the wisdom of Anton LaVey. I think he predicted all this would happen. He said, from the Church of Satan, there'll be more that are going to branch out, and they're going to try and mimic our church. Mm-hmm. They're gonna do that, and sure enough, it did happen in the 70s. I think, but one of his members broke away, and he wanted to start the Temple of Set.
Okay.
Right. And it's pretty much defunct now. I don't know if it exists. I really don't follow it. Mm-hmm. But Anton LaVey did say he's just one. There'll be more over years and decades to come. And TST is another. There's other groups trying to have their own spin on Satanism.
Right.
But in my view, Anton LaVey, I mean, we all agree that Satanism has been around for thousands of years. It's just been existent. But Anton LaVey, in my view, developed the official structure, I guess. He structured Satanism where it wasn't there before. And that was a big deal back in 1966 when he founded the Church of Satan. It was bold. It was new. It was actually an organization. It was structured.
Right.
Now there's an actual priest, a pope, the high pope or the high priest, which will be him, and everything else underneath it, all the the whole structure of it all. Mm-hmm. So before that, it was just more like cults. There's just people getting together, everybody doing whatever. There was no structure. And he really modernized Satanism. He is the father of modern Satanism, the way we know it today. And of course, everybody's trying to take that position now. They all want to be the high priest. They all want to do this. They all want to do that. So, and that's where a lot of Satanists are having difficulties with this whole movement of Satanism everywhere all of a sudden. It's not for everybody.
Right.
I think people, even Satanists that hear me out on this, you got to understand, if there's certain things you don't like about it, then it's not for you. You can't just say, I think I'll start my own version of Satanism because I don't like this part about it.
Right.
Satanism is not very welcoming. This isn't, a Catholic church.
Right.
It doesn't
it's
welcome
not
you
open
all.
every day.
Yeah, a church will take everybody in. Satanism won't. They just won't waste that kind of love on anybody.
Right.
Ingrate or not, they just won't waste their time or their love and dedication on just anybody. So,
right.
I can go on with number 6 if you like, or what was it, number 5?
5. Yep, we're on 5.
Number 5, Satan represents vengeance instead of turning the other cheek.
Okay.
Number 6, Satan represents responsibility to the responsible instead of concern for psychic vampires. Now, psychic vampires are people that are just like trolls online, basically.
Right.
They just drain you of your time and energy to respond. And we have that in real life, people that just drain you and they I get that a lot even online. Yeah. Some people want to be a Satanist. They ask me, what do I need to do? And I say, just pick up a book and read it. And carve your own path from there, because everybody's an individual. So my Satanism might be different than your Satanism,
right?
But you got to have at least the core understanding of what it's based on and go from there.
Right.
So number 7, Satan represents man as just another animal, sometimes better, more often those that walk on all fours, who because of his, quote, divine spiritual and intellectual development, end quote, has become the most vicious animal of all.
I think a lot of people can agree with that statement, whether you're a Satanist or not. Just look at the pollution we've caused.
Oh, yeah. In Satanism, when you read the Bible, the Satanic Bible, that is, there's a lot of connection to the animal within, I guess. So there's a lot of that connection. And I think that's where he gets, that's the point he's trying to make with the statements. Then the way he wrote it. Number 8, Satan represents all of the so-called sins as they all lead to physical, mental, or emotional gratification. And number 9, Satan has been the best friend of the church has ever had, as he has kept it in business all these years. Which is kind of comic. I think he threw that one in just for good measure.
Right, just to add a little humor and calm the spice. I actually had a professor who... every single one of his classes, he was a criminology professor. Every single one of his classes always started the same. He always gave a history lesson. And I put history in air quotes. He always said that crime started as being blamed on demons and demonology and a recognition that this professor was originally a Catholic priest before he became a professor of criminology. So he always started every single class. His first test was always the same. Didn't matter if it was Intro to Criminal Justice or corrections or whatever. And it became incredibly frustrating because I'm like, that's not what crime was originally. So I can definitely say that I have a history of that statement being utilized in academia of all places.
And again, just to recap this, this is how I developed because of reading these statements and living these statements and looking at the world in this way is what made me who I am today.
And it's the iron core basis of Satanism.
Of course.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I think with that, we're going to take a short break.
Yep, so we will be right back.
Hello.
Hi.
Welcome back from the break.
Welcome back.
So we've just listened to Xerxes explaining the 9 pillars of Satanism. Is that correct?
Yes. We don't call them pillars, but
okay.
Close enough.
Incorrect wording. No, correct me so our listeners are corrected.
Well, it's the... was it 9?
Yes.
Yeah,
we confirmed it was 9.
Yes, 9 satanic statements. I think I had gotten that confused with the 11 satanic rules of the earth, which is a different thing there. But we people can just go visit the churchofsatan.com website and they can read up on this. It's all there, theory and practice tab. But we can cover that here if you like, or we can.
If you're ready to, let's go ahead and talk about some of the different subsets of. We've already mentioned the temple. We've mentioned the church. What are the differences, and what other kind of groups are there out there?
There's a lot of groups that I probably never even heard of yet, and there's some that I have. Very briefly, I don't know how big they are. It just seems to me like the prophecy that LaVey had with the everyone's going to start their own church, or everyone's really trying to be the high priest of something all the time, which is, I
it's
don't
the
agree
same with
it.
paganism.
Yeah. Don't necessarily agree with that. I think it's uncalled for. It's not needed. And but there's going to be somebody that's going to do it anyway. So for that matter, I won't even go into all the ones that I do know of. I don't think, in my opinion, and this is just me speaking only, I don't speak for every Satanist out there.
Right, of course.
But I don't think they're deserving of even being mentioned. And I know it sounds cutthroat, but that's the satanic attitude.
I was about to say, didn't you read one of those that was very cutthroat?
Yes, very. Yeah.
Don't give them love if they don't deserve it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't think they deserve the love yet. They got to earn it. They got a lot more work to do if they're going to really make an impact. So,
right, of course. So the groups that you do consider worth mentioning.
The Satanic Temple. Again, Satanists have their differences. It's very individualistic. I don't agree with, I started out pretty strong with my support for them, but it's dwindled some, unfortunately, and it's sad to say, as I really expected a little bit better from them. But there was a mass exodus not too long ago. A lot of the chapter heads that they had, they just separated. The whole chapter, like I think in California, Lancaster, that group, San Francisco, other chapters that they had actually began, they separated themselves from the Satanic Temple over the fact that while this Twitter thing was going on, I had my differences already, and I made my case about a year before this thing happened. A year after the fact, like, nobody cares for what I have to say sometimes, which is fine,
Well, we do.
Well, to my followers on Facebook, I let them know why I don't stand by certain things that they do sometimes, and I call them out for it, and that's just my opinion, and I just want to hear about what other people have to say about it. And we have that dialogue on Facebook, And on this particular day, I mentioned why I didn't agree with the whole Twitter thing, the lawsuit there, and nobody really seemed to say much about it. Mm-hmm. But a year later, it came to light that he had hired an attorney that's apparently, and I don't know how to pull this information, but it was known that the attorney or the law firm, I don't know if it was a law firm or an attorney specifically that he hired to represent him, that also represented a lot of Nazi groups, hate groups. And everybody thought, if you're gonna, if you're all about this, Satan loves everybody, all this friendly stuff, and you're gonna bring in something like that, somebody that, I kind of, when it comes to Nazis and that kind of thing and the hate groups, I draw a line on that too as well. Just as a person, not related to Satanism or the way I live, it's just, we've had that war and it's been won, and there's still going to be people that are going to want to bring back that era or live in the past, on the wrong side of history. They want to bring that back. And I'm just not there with it. I feel like we've had that war, we won, and it's over and done with. And I'm going to live that way, on the right side of things. But you also got to, if you're going to be hiring or having somebody represent you in a lawsuit or whatever, you might want to do a little background on them too, and make sure that it stands by what you believe in. But I don't know if it was carelessness on his part, or he. Maybe the attorney contacted him and he offered him, I'll represent you for free, because attorneys will do that sometimes. They want that publicity, and they'll work for, for nothing or free, or just to get the spotlight and be known. So I don't know what happened there. So I can't.
You can't say 100% that it's true.
Yeah, and I don't really know if he even spoke about it. Lucien Greaves, I don't know if he even spoke about that or why he did it. But when the word got out, there was just this huge exit from people. A lot of its membership just decided to leave the organization, or just not show any more support for them. So my way of doing it was that, I'm going to limit the support that on certain things that they do. I'll throw in some support. I'll give them a mention on my personal social media and my public social media as well. But if there's things that I don't agree with, I might not say anything. I'll just leave it at that. I'll let others decide what they're going to do. If they want to know my opinion on it, I'll make a case on my own space to do so. But, it's, it happens. There's a lot of people that are not too happy with it, and some people are very supportive of TST, but...
Right. So from your understanding, what does the TST do?
I think they're very politically driven. They're really trying to make an impact for, to make real change, instead of just saying we believe in this and we're going to live by this and then spreading the word out. I think they really want to implement laws that would help, for the benefit of everybody, even pagans. But, Satanists most Satanists will say, it's a religion, we're not going to get accepted no matter what we say and do. Maybe they shouldn't do that. We don't need to be in the limelight. We prefer being in the underground. And I just think that, at first I used to think that way too. I thought, it's been this way for decades. We're all kind of settled into that mode already. But I think with the Satanic Temple really brought Satanism above ground and into the light, and everyone's just coming out now. And I think to their credit, they have made some good social change. I mean, I'm going to talk about the gays, people that are gay, the gay community, whatever you want to call it, LGBT. But I know what it's like to, I know what they go through. I don't know what it's like to be like them, but I know what they go through, and I think it's horrible what things are like in the 80s, even the early 90s maybe. And it's being more accepted. You just got to accept them for who they are. That's who they are. They're not hurting anybody. Let them be who they will be, and that's that, But in that regard, I think the Satanic Temple, they're doing a little bit of that for the LGBTQ community. And also for religion, in general. I mean, Satanism, paganism, and others as well. To that, I give them some credit for doing what they're doing, but there's sometimes I think they overstep their boundaries on some of the things they do.
Right.
So I don't know why. I really don't know. I think just the other day I noticed on the Satanic Temple of Arizona's Facebook banner, they have a Bible quote, and it's not the Satanic Bible; it's the Christian Bible.
Oh.
A quote like something with a number on it. I'm not even a Christian. I don't know how the Bible works with that stuff, but I know it's religious in that regard.
Right.
And it might be cool, maybe a cool statement that they can relate to for what it stands for, because it's in Latin. But it's like, never in the history of Satanism we've taken a quote from some other Bible and used it as part of our own, or something, a point we're trying to make across. I thought that was kind of, don't do that. Don't be taking something from somebody else's religion and try to use it like it's ours, like we own that piece now or something. I don't know what they're going with that, but I think that's kind of wrong. You're just crossing a line that shouldn't be crossed. It's not needed. And I think that also that's part of the arguments that are going on with Satanists as people. Some of them are not in agreement with each other because they feel that some people are just doing things that it's not very Satanic-like to do. We shouldn't be doing that,
Right.
I can't come up with some more examples right now, but
right.
That's fine.
That's fine. We've talked a lot about with the TST's case against Sabrina because, Sabrina's a witch, and the Baphomet with Netflix. Did you think that was an overreach, or did you think that was a appropriate level of, hey, that's not cool, that's ours?
Okay, I'm a little conflicted because I think it's great that they use the Baphomet in the show. I thought, well, cool, and I get that the Satanic Temple representatives are probably thinking, wait, that's absurd. They're using our image that we created or whatever. The statue is really where it's at. They think they're using their version of version of the statue that they made. But behind the scenes, we don't know what agreement they had at the end, because I think they settled it. Yeah,
they settled it with Netflix, but I don't know if the statue's going to remain or not.
I know that they settled it, and I read that about the only thing that we'll notice in public is that they get a little credit on the credit when they're rolling the Baphomet statues from TST or something like that. And I'm not sure if that's what they were going for all along, or why did they have to go in such a way that it took a lawsuit to get to that point. Like, really, it's like, and as a result, I'm getting comments like, "Oh, you better watch out, Xerxes. They're gonna come after you for your little Baphomet necklace that you sell on your website." And I'm like, really? I don't think, hopefully not. I mean, these guys, these lawsuits they're getting a little out of control.
Right. Okay.
In a day and age where anybody can sue anybody for anything now, I mean, that's kind of, it is a real fear, especially for, the little guy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the only real major concern that I would have as a Satanist or as an affiliate of the TST is that in Sabrina, they do make no qualms that the witches are cannibals.
Yeah, I just think that they should probably pick their battles a little more carefully. Maybe get some opinion on people, what they think they should do next. Don't just do it and thinking that we're doing it for everybody, because they can't speak for everybody.
Right.
If anything, Facebook has a feature that you can literally just take a poll right on your feed there and just put it out there. Ask a question, take a poll, take the numbers, and decide what you think you want to do next. Maybe ask the membership, since they collect emails and everything. You can get direct, take a poll directly to their email account and ask them. Because I think, like I said, with the TST and the Twitter lawsuit, after they found out who their lawyer was, there was a mass exit of membership.
Yeah, people leaving.
And a lot of people weren't too happy about that. So it could go next time they have another lawsuit with someone else. It can go in that direction again. It could be the wrong attorney for the job, or maybe it's the wrong fight in general. So we just don't know until it happens. But I think they need to really grab this thing by the horns and take better control of the situation, because you can't just throw your weight around because you got the money or the support to do it. It should, there's some responsibility that goes with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on, the Church of Satan. What is the Church of Satan
Well,
in comparison?
briefly,
in comparison to the TST.
Yeah.
in comparison, well, I mean, the Church of Satan has been around since 1966, according to as far as Anton LaVey founded the Church of Satan that year. They've been around. They fought all through the 80s over the Satanic panic that was going around. Everybody like Geraldo and other talk show hosts that were around in the 80s and 90s, early 90s, they were making shows about this, Satanism or Satanists and cults and all this stuff that was going on that was later defunct. I mean, a lot of the reports that they were saying that came from the FBI or investigators or whatever, it just wasn't true. So the Church of Satan, they fought off they did the same thing that kind of TST is doing now, but they do it through legal means. And back in the 80s and 90s, it was through talk shows and information and just putting it all out there.
Right.
I love it because I actually was just having a conversation with somebody about how older talk shows and what are they, reality shows?
Yeah.
They actually have writers on them.
Oh, yeah.
And I actually have a friend who actually went on the Jerry Springer show and was hired on as an actor for the Jerry Springer show to be a guest. So, yeah, reality TV is kind of controlled and not so realistic.
Right.
Yeah. I think the Satanic Temple is using, with the power of the internet and everything, and then the fact that they can just throw lawsuits around, it does cause waves easily. The word spreads faster than fire. I mean, it's through the internet, man. You get your message across quickly, and it can be misconstrued and everything. All sorts of things can happen. What the Church of Satan was doing in the 80s was at a much different level through just media and television, radio, where now we have the internet, we got podcasts, we got everything. I mean, it travels in an instant, worldwide even. Something I think was unthinkable back in the 80s during the Satanic Panic, But, that's why I think, and also the Satanic Temple is so new with so many young people. And the fact that a lot of its membership probably never even picked up the Satanic Bible. And they all get excited when they read these things online. They just start thinking that they're Satanists now and they can just run with it. And it just, it gets misconstrued really quickly with false information or misunderstanding of what it really means to be a Satanist.
So the Church of Satan is more an actual religious organization now and more like an actual church.
Yeah, well, it's, I got to say, I think the church, the word Church of Satan, the church was just like back in 1966, I think it was thought of as a way to make an impact with the title alone when people hear about it. I know that he did have a following, that it wasn't like Facebook where you just joined the group and online. It was actual physical presence. You got to be there, and they did performances or rituals and things of that nature. And it was like, I think it was more about impact and publicity, and it did grow into an organization. Like they actually had it structured where, there was priests and, other titles that they were given,
right?
And I think at one point they even had, I think in the 80s, early 80s, late 70s, they had a grotto system, which is what the Satanic Temple is doing now with the chapters. But the grotto system, obviously, they folded it up. They just said, no, we're going to do away with it because I think too many people wanted to develop their own little church or whatever and then grow, So the Church of Satan is more of a Church of Satan, a church in name only, really. There is some structure within the, wherever the high priest is now, which I think is in New York. But, for the most part, because it's mostly an online presence these days, it's like everything else is now. It's just more or less in name only. It's not really a church, but it is a lifestyle, like with the philosophy involved in it and everything else, There's people that do get together I guess you could say if there's going to be a church, is the one you form with people you know and do a ritual. I think pagans probably do the same thing.
Right.
Yeah.
You can probably consider that church that day for that event. But no, it wouldn't be like organized like every Sunday or like the other people.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So, weird question. Have you ever seen the show Lucifer?
I have not, believe it or not.
Oh, okay. All right.
Well, because it just, to me, it's like, really, Lucifer? I'm like, come on. What am I just gonna? I know I'll probably get disappointed. I'm like,
gotcha.
Why bother with something like that? Even Sabrina, I don't even watch it, but I've only read about it, or in stories in the papers or online publications. Stuff like that.
I think with the show Lucifer, it's just another gimmicky, how can we sell a crime show?
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm not bashing it. I enjoyed the few seasons that I watched of it. But yeah, it's very much we want another way to sell a crime show after Bones and
yes.
And what's the other one I used to watch? Well, Castle. When Castle and Bones left TV, they needed something else to replace their time.
Yeah, well, it's like, remember what I read earlier, that the Church of Satan has been the friend of the church for, I think Satan is the friend of the programmers out there now, all these TV shows. I mean, it makes for good stories.
Right.
And horror movies
it gets people's attention, and they want to see what it's all about.
Yeah, there was even, I think there's somebody now trying to launch a Baphomet, the movie. It's a horror film called Baphomet.
Okay.
And I mentioned this back in 2017. It was supposed to be released in December of 2018, last month, but it didn't get released.
Oh.
I think I don't know what's going on with it. I don't know if they're having trouble releasing it, funding.
I wonder if it's, did you know if it was Lionsgate or if it was the same people who did Krampus?
I don't think it's Lionsgate. I actually I don't even know who these people are, but I know that I think it's been filmed and everything. I don't know if
it's just getting it out.
Getting it out. Do some research on that one.
Yeah,
could be a distribution issue for the theaters to get the movies out there and put it on the big screen. Mm-hmm. But I'm not sure what's going on. But it didn't get released when they said it was a year before when I shared the story. So yeah, I mean. Well, let's talk about why Wiccans or pagans, they have this, I think I mentioned earlier, why do they have this fear of a Satanist when they see one? They want to stay away from them. Or they can't touch anything that's satanic related, like a pendant or a book.
Right. Well, I think that has a lot to do with a lot of pagans were raised Christian, and I think it's hard to get rid of a lot of those those feelings.
Yeah, it's something that's been indoctrinated, or just a deep rooted fear of, oh, Satan's bad, and I mean I've been guilty of it. Don't get me wrong, I have been guilty of it, but knowing more about it has helped me, say like, it's really not that bad of a thing. I mean, one of my friends, actually at my new job, she's a Satanist, and we've had several conversations just in the break room, just talking about the differences and the similarities of of paganism to Satanism. And it's one of those, you people will have that deep rooted fear of it because it's for lack of a better phrasing, it's a fear of the unknown, because they've been told so long that it's evil, that it's bad, that you shouldn't do it, that they don't research it themselves, and they don't want to talk about it.
Right. And I think there's two other reasons. The one of them, we talked about what fluffy bunnies in paganism, what we call fluffy bunnies. There's a half of fluffy bunnyism that isn't just, oh, you've only read one book. There's another half of fluffy bunnyism that is more like, we just want to be love and light and nothing bad, nothing negative, and we're not going to touch even our own shadow work. We're not going to deal with that. And I think to those particular pagans, when they see a god or a deity that embodies embodies the darkness, that embodies the shadows, that embodies the not necessarily the negative side, but the overindulgence side. They don't want to touch it because they don't want to touch that part of themselves. Yeah. So there's this fear of, oh, if I even look at your wares, or I look at that symbol, I'm going to suddenly be struck down by the bad part of me, or the bad part of paganism, or maybe they think that it's protecting them from the negative part of paganism. And then there's this other portion that I think is more a historical thing. Back in the beginning of paganism, when paganism was going big, Buckland and a lot of other big name father elders of paganism and Wicca and so on and so forth were saying in the media, we're not Satanists. We don't worship the devil. We don't sacrifice animals. We don't do this. We don't do that. Wiccans don't do these things. We don't hex. Well, guess what? We've hexed the president. We've accepted voodoo, hoodoo, and other religions that do sacrifice animals, whether they take care of the carcass as food, offering, or whatnot. So we do honor a horned god as a god of love, a god of sex, a god of all this stuff. Guess what? Modern millennial paganism includes the shadows, includes the sex, includes the overindulgence. So why are we afraid of Satan? I can't tell you. I don't understand it.
And I also love the way that it put it. Satan has been a friend of
the church.
Of the church. It's like duct tape. The light side and the dark side. You can't have one without the other, and it holds the world together.
What's another thing is historically, and people who've watched The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina should know this, and maybe hopefully know that this is a historical viewpoint of witches. To be a witch, you had to promise yourself to Satan, and you had a sign in Satan's book. Maybe we don't like the idea, modern witches, of saying that that's how we got our power, that's how we got our strength, because modern paganism, our magic and our power comes from us individually, not from any deity whatsoever. So I think maybe there's even that sense of it, like, the crucible, if I touch this now, my power comes from him and I'm a devotee of him. And one of the reasons in the show that Sabrina is hesitant to signing in the Book of the Beast is because she doesn't want to be at Satan's beck and call, and she likes having her independence and her strength. So I think maybe, I don't know, maybe there's a psychological thing with that people who are educated in that area have a fear of. I might be just going crazy.
It's interesting you mentioned that in the Satanic Bible, and for some of the so-called Satanists that probably never read the book again, believe it or not, there is a section in there where you make a pact with the devil or Satan by signing a contract about selling your soul to him or something, or her, or whatever. So there's a couple of pages in there with it, and it's got a little form that you put your name on and supposed to sign it to sell your soul to the Satan or something like that. I don't even have an answer as to why that's there. I don't know if that's supposed to be sarcastic on Anton LaVey's part or what. That would be a question for the high priest of the Church of Satan to be asked one of these days.
Well, I mean, I mean, kind of like what we were talking about earlier about being baptized. Yeah, I kind of see it as something very similar. It's more of a public showing or a public gesture of being a part of your religion.
Yes. Right.
And that's kind of one of those things, like, you hear about people signing deals with the devils, down at the crossroads, all that fun stuff. But yeah, I kind of think it is more of a public declaration.
I agree.
Yeah.
It makes sense. Yeah.
I mean, it's not, I mean, yeah, you could be honestly signing a pact with the devil, but that's your religion. That is what you believe, and you are comfortable with that.
And when we say devil, I meant that loosely, like, devil doesn't really apply to a Satanist.
The same way, yeah.
But I think it's written in that way in the book. I can't remember exactly, but I know there's a section there regarding that. And also, I got to ask you, as a Satanist, because I've met pagans or Wiccans, and sometimes they say, when they say they're a witch, they have to follow it up with, I'm a white witch. And I'm like, really? Because I want to know where the black ones are. That's where I would love to. I think I'd be attracted to one if I ever saw one. I'm like, jeez.
I actually consider that phrasing very outdated. And fight me, witches. Go ahead. I find that extremely outdated to say white witch, black witch. Even reading in Buckland's book, it's magic isn't either way. No matter what you write the magic, it's not black or white or dark or evil. There are some people who will say they're gray witches. That is more of a not outdated term, I guess, but I think the black and the white is very outdated in the sense that you do what thy will, harm none isn't necessarily always going to be a thing. I'm more of the do what thy will, harm none, take no shit kind of girl. I work actively hard to not cause harm to other people. I mean, my whole entire religious stance on cruelty to animals and animal cruelty and animal testing has changed my whole entire beauty routine, and I think that's an incredibly important part of my religion. However, if you're gonna do something to me, I'm gonna throw it right back at you. And I have not cast a hex myself, but I don't allow shit to happen to me. Yes. I set up my own bounds and my own shit, and I mean, we're gonna say fuck all the time, and that's another thing of the whole the fluffy bunnyism. I'm going to touch my shadows. I'm going to work on my dark crap that I have hidden in closets, and that is sometimes considered black magic and black witchery, and
the way
it's part of magic.
The way that I used to look at it was think of Jedi and Sith. You know, you have the Jedi who are trying to keep the peace and keep the good side of the Force, and you have the Sith who are the ones that shoot out the electricity, trying to find their own power and their own, you know, their own upcoming. And then you have the gray Jedi who are just trying to find the balance between the two. Yeah. That's kind of how I used to look at, you know, when people were saying I'm a white witch, I'm a black witch, you know. It's just like I said before, you can't have the dark side without the light side. You can't have the light side without the dark side. It's going to be there. It's yin and yang. There's a little piece in each. Yeah. So, you know, you do have, just like with every religion, you have the extremists who do go. It's like, oh, I am going to be a white witch and do nothing but what I consider good.
Yeah. And I think, so we come from a reclaiming background. The reclaiming tradition is deep in activism. I think you can't do activism, you can't do good for the world until you know your own negative and your own badness and your own where you're toxic and what kind of toxicity you put out into the world. And I think it's the strongest magic that any witch can perform is self-care and self-development. And that means dealing with where you're a bad person and where you're not the best you. And that's black magic. Sorry, that is. Cursing the president is activism, is working towards a better world for all, in your opinion, and it's black magic, but it's for the good. So, I mean,
sometimes you got to get your hands dirty for the greater good.
Yep. And, you know, Age of Ultron spoilers. I haven't seen Ultron, but I've heard some arguments where he thinks he is the ultimate hero. And I think a lot of people who work towards black magic, even some people who are actually bad in our political spheres, think they're working towards the ultimate good. And they just don't see it the way the rest of the world does. So a black witch or a dark magic working witch is working towards what they think is their good through maybe some.
I mean, for my millennial geeks out there, Thanos.
Yeah.
You know, he actually believes that he's doing good by wiping out half of existence.
Yes. Right.
Because if you wipe out half of existence, you have more resources.
Right. And that's exactly what I'm saying is like that's a negative. You're killing, you're harming, you're doing bad things for good ends.
Yeah.
So.
Wow.
Hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, that makes sense. I could see it the way you see it. Satanists, you know, we don't really, when we talk about magic, there is no white or black.
Right.
It's just magic.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, I was just looking up the 11 satanic rules of the earth. I think it was, and there's one of them, that one of the statements made that talks about magic. Mm-hmm. And this kind of like the way it's number 7 for the Satanists out there that know what I'm talking about. Acknowledge the power of magic if you have employed it successfully to obtain your desires. If you deny the power of magic after having called upon it with success, you will lose all you have obtained. So, we don't have black witch or white witch. It's just a witch. And, in most cases, it's the satanic witch, which is the most common phrase used for women. I think men go by warlock or satanic warlock, But there is no black magic, white magic, or anything like that. It's just magic. And you know what? In our view, it might cause harm. It's just something that can happen depending on what the intent of the ritual is when you perform it. I will give you one example. Probably the biggest curse I ever performed was on. I was in the military, as you know. My mother had passed, and as I was getting out of the military, I decided to leave early. About 9 months shy of my 4-year contract, which somebody would have thought, that's kind of crazy. You should have just stayed. But it's like, my mind was set. I need to leave, and it didn't matter when. Right. I didn't want to stay there for the whole 4 years. So, and I had a little problem with one of my commanders that was in charge of me. He was a sergeant major. He was way up there. He's the last rank you can get in the Marine Corps. And I remember his last name. I don't know if it'd be okay to mention the name.
Yeah, maybe like
last name.
Yeah, nah.
Okay.
Just sergeant or sergeant major.
I've mentioned his name on my social media because I met everything I wanted to happen to him, and he hated me. He knew I was a Satanist. He found out. And he really gave me quite the yelling, and then he would humiliate me. I got punished one time. I had to clean toilets with a freaking fork, believe it or not, and scrape the crust or whatever that's in the toilet bowl. I had to do that for about 10 days, every day for a couple of hours, just clean toilets that way. It was just ridiculous, and there was nothing I could do. I was
You're at the mercy.
Yeah, I was a Lance Corporal, E3, and I didn't really have much say in anything. I had to take the punishment as it came. So I knew that I was getting ready to leave, and I just performed a ritual, a private one, and I just thought, I want this guy's career to end. I don't care how long it takes. If he's going to retire from the Marine Corps, I want it to end before it gets to that point. I want him to really feel the pain of what I'm going through. Well, it didn't take effect until after I was gone. Right. I think about 7 months or so after I was discharged, I found out through some friends that I stayed in contact with. They told me that he had been in trouble himself. He was having some marital affairs, like he was beating on his wife or something, and they gave him a talking to, and he just wouldn't listen. He'd been arrested, and he still wouldn't take orders from the higher ups above him, and then it actually led to his demise as far as his career. They busted him down to a private. This was like a 30-year. Not even a veteran. He was still active duty.
He was a career career soldier.
Yes. Sergeant major, busted down to private, and then kicked out of the Marine Corps. I mean, that was like the greatest champion ritual I ever. I'm like, yes.
So he was dishonorably discharged.
Fucking deserved it, man. And I mean that with a passion. He deserved it.
Of course, if he was a wife beater, I would agree. I think
it's probably my greatest accomplishment as far as casting magic on someone like that. I mean, to this day, I love it. I love telling that story because I really, in my heart, I meant and I can never deny the power of magic. Because if I do, it could come back to me 100-fold more than what he got.
Right.
We just don't know, but. It's pretty powerful stuff, and that really cemented me into Satanism at that point. When I realized the power I had, it was like, wow, this is amazing.
Right, yeah.
It's probably the greatest story I could tell from personal experience.
when I was transferring, I'm still with the same company. I pretty much laid it down that I was transferring out of my current contract at an interview for a promotion. I asked the question because there was some rumors, what is the hourly rate? And my then boss kind of flipped his knots and was like, I don't understand why there's questions about this. I don't understand why there's confusion. I'm like, because your good old boy best friend lies through his teeth and told everybody a different story about what the rate is. And so after he had his nice little fit about that, I was like, you know what? I'm accepting a position with a different contract within company, start processing my transfer. And the first thing I did was make a call to my friend who's in corporate saying, what can you do to stall my transfer? My second call was to the other manager saying, hey, I'm accepting your offer, by the way. And then the third thing I did was write a spell that was a block. So it was diminishing his hold over me. And because of that, I think really, and my whole entire transition was very smooth. It was only 2 weeks, which was what I expected and what I had already thought was a respectable amount of time. And there was no issues. There was no write-ups. He couldn't do anything to prevent it at that point. And I say it's the magic, but I don't know if that friend called in some calls and was like, no, you can't fuck with her. Yeah. But even that, just doing the magic would have affected those calls. Oh yeah, and so I definitely agree.
I agree with that. Yeah, it's possible. Yeah.
Oh yeah. As long as you do your due, you get your magic to work.
That is true.
But you gotta put the work in.
You gotta put the work in to get the results.
Yes, definitely.
So, what is your company's name?
My website is www.sigilofbaphomet.com. SIGIL of Baphomet. Everybody knows Baphomet.
Right. Yeah. And you can find your stuff at Instagram with...
yes, there's links to Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest.
Okay.
And, there's a lot of pictures to go through, and you can follow Instagram and Facebook there. I don't always share the same picture on both.
Right.
Different content. I have a little help with Facebook now, so
nice.
All
right. Well, you can find more of that from our stuff as well. We'll obviously go ahead and follow you, so you can our listeners can go ahead and look at that.
Link to it. Yep.
So, well. Let's go ahead and dive in. I don't have a whole lot of news going on other than in February we'll have in bulk. Right now is the new moon, and it's a pretty big new moon. So
yeah, I think the next full moon.
The next full moon
is the super blood wolf moon.
Yes, so it's going to be a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
So get your stuff ready for that. We want to thank from our Patreon supporters. We want to thank Kathleen and Strange Order. And Jared, do you think we make Patreon worth your while?
I do believe so. You see, with Patreon, of course, if you do become a supporter at our $5 level, you get an awesome button, sticker, a little bit of a thank you note from us, and of course, a monthly exclusive mini-sode. That's only for our Patreon supporters, where Autumn and I get together and we talk about just, current events that we got going on in our lives and how we witchify them.
Right. And of course, our $1 a month, you definitely get your shout out right here. So thank you to all of our Patreon supporters.
Yep.
You can listen to Millennial Pagan Podcast on Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, YouTube. You can find Millennial Pagan Podcast on Facebook, Pinterest. Sorry, not Pinterest. I'm not doing that. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And you can find Jera where?
Of course, on Twitter under @JeraStone, and of course on Instagram @Haggard_cosplay.
And you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and I'm the one covering that Instagram. You can also find Pagan Book Talk Phoenix Valley, which is my little baby, on Facebook as well. And that's the first Sunday of the month where you can bring any book and talk to other pagans about reading. And so I guess from everyone here at Millennial Pagan Podcast,
Merry meet,
merry part, and merry meet again.